whatever you're happy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sitton Football Uncensored podcast with me, Joe Mealing, asking the questions to John. Getting better, aren't I?
Yeah. Well done.
Cheers.
That's a good start. That's a good start. Look, the sweat's like I can see the sweat from here.
I
know. No stress. Don't worry.
Can we swear? Can we swear during the day? The sun's still out. I suppose
the sun's out. Yeah. The sky is blue.
Yeah.
There's not a cloud to spoil the view.
Is it me? I mean, just talking about the weather because we're British. I suppose we have to talk about the weather sometimes. But it's so sunny and clear during the day. It's been half cold at night, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been. Yeah. I've had to water me boulders a bit earlier, so they still get a few gamma rays on them, or a few sun rays. Yeah, because it's otherwise a frost thing, and I've got some lovely blooms coming through. And
nice.
If it gets hold of them, it'll kill them. Yeah, so I've got some stunning ones coming through, actually from last year. So what I've done is I've looked after them, and they've replenished themselves. That's a good posh word.
Nice, good word. Yeah, very good word. Something that didn't replenish itself. You see what I did there? Was the European Super League.
I know. It's good that we should try and cap it off, Joe. At the end of the day, like everyone else has done. Letters of apology to the fans and all that. Unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. I'll tell you what's interesting, right? Because I'll just get up and I don't know. I just follow my nose every day. But one thing I'm rigid about is my little workout in the morning.
Miss it.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's been broke enough times. But I just follow the thing. I just follow the. I ain't really that sort of setting me ways other than when the work's there. I was like an ex-Mill teammate of mine. He's a cabbie and all. Paul Roberts, actually before me, and he was saying we're used to it. It's about discipline and commitment. But when the work's not out there, I just tend to muddle through the day. And there's a lot of reading material. So I was catching up on the newspapers, and I see a good article that ties in with my thoughts for probably the last 25, 26, 27 years when people were looking to take over at the little club I was at, much lower down, Leyton Orient. And what it boils down to, it was an article by Adrian Charles, right? And like BBC, formerly BBC, not so much on the BBC now, but he was he actually put us out of work once. We done, I was on a show on a Saturday morning called Early Doors, and there was a commissioning season, and then people who knew me, who knew people, they said, "Well, invite him in." So I had a little gig there for about a year at the BBC, which was really good, thoroughly enjoyable, and he ended up with I think it was a 2-hour slot, which encroached upon the hour we were meant to have. Anyway, I read the article, and it ties in with what I said ages ago. The problem is fans are so fickle. They're so reflective, and it's like I said before, a microcosm society. They want the here and now. They want success almost yesterday. It's immediate gratification type of culture. And then what happens is when owners come in, because it's like I said on the last episode, well, what did they expect? When you've got owners coming in, they're thinking he confesses when the Chinese owners bought West Bromwich Albion. The first thoughts are, has he got any money? Not what they should be, which is what I warn people. And I said to people in and around the football club that I was at, Leyton Orient, not what can he do for the football club? Is he going to do the right thing by the football club? And it transpires that right across the board, the answer is an emphatic no.
Yeah, it's almost like, who's the person doing the due diligence? I think we sort of touched on it in the last one. And it seems like that. I know you have like football trusts and football supporters trusts and stuff like that. But you mentioned the word. What was the word we used? Custodian. And it's almost like you should be able. You need to pass the custodian test. We was talking about whether there should be some kind of new regulation or new independent regulator or some kind of change to the to the way football's run in order to mitigate something like this happening, or the worst successes of capitalism kind of destroying football. But you're right. I wonder if there's something in, basically at the moment, if you sell yourself to the board, you're in. You might have to, you may know more than me, you might have to meet an amalgam of a small handful of football fans that have some group, and they're probably happy as long as you got, as you say, money to spend. But I'm just trying to think if there's an analogy or a similarity with other businesses and other sectors whereby it's true custodianship, true custodianship, almost like a charity. I mean, it isn't a charity, it's for profit, but it has terms and conditions attached to and roles and responsibilities attached to owning the club. And that's almost a contract in and of itself. It's not just buy the club, do what you want with it. It's buy the club under these terms, one of which should be bring young players through, bolster the academy.
Well, I said that.
Yeah.
I said that. I mean, I'll be true with you. I had a bit of a rant on because we divvied it up into parts 1 and 2, didn't we? In the last episode, very briefly on the Mourinho sack in the second part, and the first part was about the ESL. And I went on a bit of a rant where I'm adamant, and I still maintain it, that I haven't been shown enough respect, really, was the word I used, and recognition for me foresight. And the things that I said should be put in place, and the things that I said should happen. And in that episode, I said very briefly that I know, for obviously we've got MP for culture, media, and sport, but I've always maintained there should be a separate MP for football, because probably since the induction of the Premier League, because of the millions, dare I say it, billions that are awash in football, right? Okay, but then latter day, I'm thinking to myself, well, where do you turn? Because it's quite clearly shown that you can't even turn to government at this moment in time.
No.
You've got the allegations yesterday with some of the language that Boris Johnson used. I could have been one of them. When he's talking about, I don't care if the bodies are paraphrased, but the bodies piled high. We've got a. I don't want a third lockdown, etc., etc. Then you've got the inquiry. It's funny watching. Flicking through last night, brief glimpse of I've got news for you. They showed the guy, is it Baldwin, who's doing the inquiry into Greensill, Cameron. Well, he actually, the QC himself, actually, his firm allegedly received, I think the figure mentioned was 7 million from the same sort of sources, right? So it's like I said, it's funny. I said, who checks the checker? Well, it quite clearly shown that with the lobbying for between Osborne and Cameron coming on top and actually shouting at people in City Hall allegedly, and sticking it on Johnson not to cap private eye numbers, the lobbying for Uber. There was, lo and behold, there's an article, I think it was the Mail on Sunday, about their support for Uber, a non-tax-paying US corporation, sexual assault and rape app. So where do you turn? Where do you turn? I said it's two significant things. Who checks the checker, right? So you've got the Baldwin thing, doing an inquiry on Cameron, and then when they were in situ, the Tory government. So the point being, if we do happen to have an MP specifically for football, they've got to be totally beyond reproach. And when you look throughout the game, I've always maintained, and I still maintain, there's too many vested interests, and there's too many separate organisations, right? So you've got the Premier League, you've got the FA, formerly the be all and end all, the custodians and the disciplinarians of the game. I had enough trips to 16 Lancaster Gate when they were, basically the general, giving a general overview and overseers of the game, right? So Premier League, FA, then you've got the LMA, League Managers Association, then you've got the English Football League, and then you've got the PFA, the Professional Football Association. And yet they can't get together, right, and lay down a decent coaching syllabus and a decent set of rules for the game.
Yeah, and that's without UEFA and FIFA above that. I mean, they're talking to the government, and you're right about who checks the checker. I mean, there's allegations that Woodward met with Boris Johnson's new chief of staff and Boris Johnson to discuss the European. Well, they had a meeting. Whether they're denying that they spoke about the European Super League, but that's the rumor that was discussed at that meeting, which was the precursor to the other clubs following Woodward into signing up to the league, because it got Boris Johnson's tacit approval. So if that, who knows? I mean, obviously Dominic Cummings there's a big battle going on there. Who knows what information he's got? I think he's speaking at a select committee next week. For more things to come out of the woodwork. So, I mean, the other thing to say about, you're right about who checks the checker, but I actually worked in sort of regulation back in the day and politics, but law is the backstop, isn't it? Law is the backstop. No one is above the law. And if you did have come up with the word covenant, like a contractual covenant, that when an owner comes in, they sign that covenant. Now there's elements in that covenant that dictates, I guess, what the fans want. Maybe there's a sort of standardized covenant across the board, maybe it's bespoke to the club, and they can't break that covenant. And if they do break that covenant, they can be taken to court, and no one is above the law. So I wonder if there's things like that where you kind of just make it, just basically create a few more hurdles for owners to jump through when they want to buy a club.
Yeah, well, it's about the club at the end of the day. I've always maintained, Joe, it's about the club, and believe it or not, because I have spoken disparagingly, but that's because I've been wounded. But I always part of the trouble that was caused, or that I caused for myself, was because and someone actually came through on Twitter the other day after the failure to get into the playoffs. They actually said what I said 25, 26 years ago, and even while I was there as a player, that it's Leyton Orient was my fourth and final club, and I was there for 10 years, and I just said it's too cosy. Someone said exactly the same words on Twitter, right? But sticking to specifics, it's about doing the right thing by the club. But unfortunately now, whether it's at the highest level or whether it's at a much lower level, I think the genie's out of the bottle. And unfortunately, the damage has been done. In Leyton Orient's case, I mean, the club don't even own the lease on the ground. Then the pitch is leased back to the first team for a rent, which is, the equivalent of probably four decent forwards per home game in terms of salary. And then you've got the corners of the ground where the lease was previously owned by the club, and then it was when the new lease was negotiated, ended up in the hands of the then owner. Land that basically, as a consequence of the lease, in name only, they was able to sell off and build apartments on. So then I asked the question, well, where did the money go from the land? Then I asked the question, where did the money go from the sale of the apartments, obviously to the development company? But then I said, when it filters down, what about things like ground rents, which would be a tidy sum annually? And then the then owner actually had the audacity to say on TalkSport, there's no money in the lower divisions, and then sort of totally, I would say, contradicted it or confounded it, or was the exception to the rule, whereby I actually managed to sell the club to someone for 4 million with no assets, a club with no assets. Because obviously, like I say, the lease wasn't in the club's name. They had no real productive youth policy, which you've touched on, which could be part of the covenant. And then some of the land was sold to develop into apartments. And then, like I said, you're talking about the ground rents. And then no real sort of crowds of, like I said, of any real note, probably around the 4K mark. So where are the assets that you're selling? But he somehow managed to procure 4 million allegedly. And then there started to, there were problems behind the scenes, and it nearly went out of business. And we come full cycle all the way round back to fans who actually, some of them I knew personally, acquaintances, ex-sponsors of mine, when I was a player, attended the High Court in the Strand to actually save the football club. So for me, it makes sense, because I always endorsed it, always tried to have a relationship with the supporters club. Always, I had to meet the managers at the start of the season. when I used to do me walk to the ground, because there was no parking at the ground for anybody. So you had to park nearby in a residential street. And you'd always bump into supporters when I was a player and a manager, and I would keep them informed. And they thanked me, but never stuck by me. As a consequence, it sounds rude and disparaging, but they're a borderline non-league club. And then that was proved when they actually got relegated into non-league. Yeah. But you look at up north places like Bury, where it's happened, where people are trying to, and even at the highest level, Man United, unless I'm misreading things or misinterpreting things, owners bought the club and then remortgaged the club to get their money back. Well, that's not right. That's not right. Any revenue coming into the club, it's for the good of the club, should be for the good of the club. So I warned people of all these things 24, 25, 26 years ago when I was in situ, and I had to deal with 4 chairmen in 10 months because I could see what was going on. But now it's reared its ugly head in the form of the European Super League. And like I said before, what did supporters expect? When you got people, I don't think so much. I think he's got an unfair shtick over it. With like in terms of like what's been aimed at him, people do their little shtick in the paper or on the media, like Roman Abramovich. I think he's been a fantastic owner, right? And I think he's the exception to the rule. And apparently he was furious when he found out about what was being conducted, because obviously it's well documented now. I think he's been refused entry, a visa. But in terms of benevolence, there's certain clubs who coat Chelsea off, and there's certain clubs who coat Roman Abramovich off. I'm telling you now, I'm backing him 100%, because I think he probably had very little to do with what was going on, what was being negotiated. Let's have it right. Someone said to me, a close friend of mine, who used to box for a well-known club in the East End, had his own businesses, and he's a very astute guy. He said, let's have it right. This didn't happen within 24 hours. This has been ongoing probably for a year in terms of negotiations, and it's only reared its head now, right? But thankfully, it was extinguished by the protests of the fans. But going back to Roman Abramovich, I just think he's been a fantastic, benevolent owner. You could say
Bruce Buck?
Well, he's the chairman. He's the chairman, so obviously he's running the gaff. He's a scepter. He's a Yank, isn't he? You know what I mean? So like, it should come as no surprise. I don't think it's a Russian forte. I think it's the common denominator as we become more and more Americanized with things like I've been saying it, all these Americanisms like VAR, and then tax dodging companies like Uber. We're becoming more and more engulfed as a mini America. And they're obviously right the way down to what goes on the street, which obviously I've always trod that fine line between academia and the street. But like being a cab driver, you get to see things and you take note. Yeah. It's part of the job. It's part of what you're taught. You get clues, you know what I mean? So you're driving around and you absorb stuff. So things like when I was coming up, so I'm 62 in October, you had professional firms, but you never had all this street gang shit. This is all like Americanized. So from the top to the bottom, it's slowly but surely becoming rotten to the core. That's the point I'll make. But if you look at the common denominator, I think three. If you include Chelsea with the chairman, 4 out of the 6 franchisees are American. Right, but Roman and then latter day. Him and his lieutenants have tried to get the club run on a cost-effective basis, and they've got this business model whereby they produce good young kids, they get hold of good young kids, they coach them well, and then farm them out for loan fees. Well, what's wrong with that? Because what you're doing, it enables you to plough money back into the academy, right? But on the big picture basis,
I might have to challenge you on that one.
Well, it's no different to what Barry Fry was doing in the lower leagues.
Well, that's where it'd be interesting to get your take, because I mean, from an outsider looking in, they just cherry pick the best players from smaller lower league club academies, stick them out on loan, and then basically they've got like an academy structure that's predicated on loanees. So they had something stupid like 70-odd players on loan, didn't they, a couple of years ago?
Arsenal used to do it a lot. And when I spoke to Pat Rice about it, and I said, what's the idea behind that? They actually loaned players out to non-league clubs back in the day. I'm talking 80s, early 90s. And it was very prevalent under George, and he was a great believer in. So you've got like a.
Isn't it predatory though? Isn't it predatory? I mean, if you was running the academy at Leyton Orient, Chelsea come in and take Ledley King or the top player that you was coaching at the time.
Well, they did. Spurs did. Yeah, Spurs did take him. Yeah,
for nothing, and then they go on and sell him for 50 mil. I mean,
yeah. And whatever coach inherited Ledley could move on to the next part of the let's say football alphabet, because over a period of 2 seasons, I taught him all the basics. I taught him. He was impeccable and immaculate in the way he trained, and very, very and highly intelligent football. Well, you're always going to get that. So that brings me to the next thing. Part of the business model I wanted with Hearn, or one of the other 3, preferably the chairman who was already there in situ, Tony Wood. So you had the acting chairman, Derek Weinrabe, who's now dead, while Tony was in Rwanda, trying to clear up the mess from the Rwandan civil war. Then you had Tony when he came back. He's the only one who'd ever ploughed money into the club. And then I got 2 shitty blackboards that couldn't even take chalk, and I put all these bits of A4 a business plan on the thing, because we couldn't even afford a flip chart, and the felt tip pens for match day or for the office. And I talked them through the business plan I wanted. Then it was Phil Wallace, who went from Borehamwood to Stevenage instead of Borehamwood to Leyton Orient. And then it was Barry Hearn. And it frightened the life. I think it frightened the life out of Barry Hearn, because it would have meant, to a certain degree, speculating to accumulate. And I'll never forget his words when he walked into the office. On one of the first few occasions I actually got to talk to him and meet him, he said, "I'm a businessman. I'm not a philanthropist." He said, I'm not here to throw money at the thing. You've got to make it cost effective. But at the same time, people deserve to get paid. You know what I mean? So part of it was, I've got no problem sticking to what you're saying and sticking to the point. I've tried to explain in a roundabout way. Part of it would have been an acceptance whereby you had a more of a continental setup. So I was well read up on it, and it's a case of putting people in the situation, and you've only got to look at what's happened since. You know what I mean? They ain't had bad careers, which I'll come to. But there's a level of acceptance whereby you become a feeder club. There's no shame in that, and I don't.
No, but as long as you get recompensed appropriately.
Well, yeah. I mean, he done. Depending on what figures you read, I mean, I can't make it out as someone that astute and that clever, and to make that much money that young. Simon Jordan has a scream up about only getting 250 grand off from Spurs when they lost a player to Spurs, after investing all the time and coaching into him. I forgot the kid's name, Benstead or someone like that. I might be wrong. It's remiss of me not to know his name, because I'm very genned up on these things. And what they do, they strike a chord with me and what was going on with me in my early career. And then he goes on, he's having a scream up about 250 grand and goes on to do 40 million in cold blood.
Just a very sort of random question, really. But what do you think? Because I was just thinking there should be a standardized price for kids, because it's hard to gauge their talent, although there could be a way to do that. When big clubs come in and poach essentially young quality kids from lower league clubs, next to nothing, if not nothing, probably promising the parents X, Y, and Z. So they take the kids away. They then, all the nurturing has been done by the lower league academies. They haven't got fairly recompense for it.
Yep.
Then the big club go on, maybe nurture that player, sell him on for a profit or whatever, or he makes the first team. Should there be standardized fees, fees for those big clubs when they come in and poach those young players? And if so, could you actually do it based on some kind of standardized rating system for those players?
Yeah, there's no reason why that can't be negotiated. I'll give you, for instance, very quickly, right? One of the things I said to Ern in my portfolio was, I want people, good professional people, well rewarded, right? And then the word gets round that it's the place to be, in terms of, like, they look after, they've got a little bit of class about them, and they look after their own, they look after their employees, right? So let me give you, for instance, head of youth development I wanted after the previous geezer walked out. I actually had a conversation with yesterday. Bernie Dixon, he walked out, and I wanted Les Reed. Right, so he goes on to become manager of Charlton, He works for England on at least 3 different occasions. He's an FA staff coach, and he ends up for years and years and years at Southampton's academy, procuring, coaching, developing, and selling on good, extraordinarily good young players. Right, so these are the people. Me as the boss. I'm the governor, and these are the people I want to employ. Right, so look what they've done in the game since. Right, so like I said, I deserve a bit more respect. Right, for having thought things through and worked things out. Youth team manager, Neil Banfield. I think he's now at QPR. I'm not sure. I fell out a little bit. I was a bit disappointed with the way I was spoken to after sticking up for a black kid at Haringey Borough and fighting off 4 people armed with a wooden baseball bat, an aluminium baseball bat, a long wooden pole and a drill and an iron bar. And his wife ridiculed me over dinner, so I never spoke to him again. But he worked for 22 years under Arsene Wenger, starting with the young age groups, Don something, who used to play for Ireland. Liam Brady brought him in. So he worked as an under-17 coach. Then he worked as an under-19 coach with Donnell. And then Arsene Wenger offers him the reserve team manager's job. So he's employed by one of the highest profile, best known managers in the game, in the world game, for 22 years, right? I come through and done the badges with him, right? And then the other geezer I wanted to employ as a specialist goalkeeping coach, he ends up as manager of England amateurs, England under 23, commentator and match summariser for the BBC by the name of Mick Payne. These are the people I put in place for me to employ on a long-term basis, as well as myself at Leyton Orient Football Club. And I said, and obviously football, right, very quickly, Joe, a lot of things that happen in football is based on, like there is in any art, right? It's based on plagiarism, right? So the business model, I said, we've got to be thinking along the lines of Dario Gradi at Crewe, where you produce an abundance of good, in inverted commas, good footballers, right? And then the bottom line is, when a club comes in and you've got like a Danny Murphy or you've got a David
Rob Jones.
Rob Jones went to Liverpool. Yeah, okay, no problem. As long as we get enough money to replenish it. So I said, this is the rate that's recommended by the FA per hour for a fully qualified coach. I said, ideally, that's what I want to pay them in terms of centre of excellence and being employed during the week. And then at the other end, I want them rewarded. So if they sign, obviously they sign schoolboy forms and academy forms, or centre of excellence forms, as they were called at the time. Then it was YTS. I said, when they sign YTS, I want these coaches rewarded. So they get, for instance, in inverted commas, a lump sum of 250 quid or a lump sum of 500 quid as a bonus put in their pay packet. Then when they sign pro, they get another 500 quid. Then if they're sold, they get a small percentage of what they're sold for. So all along the line, the people involved in this player's development, because they were very good. All the people I'm talking about, Les Reed, Neil Banfield, Mickey Payne, very, very good at building relationships. Even the previous manager's dad, I had him employed. It was fantastic. Ross Embleton, the previous manager, I employed his dad, Steve Embleton. And it was fantastic with the youngsters. Fantastic. So I said, Steve, he worked as a groundsman. I said, ideally, I want you to try and, if you can, we're going to look after you, but I want you to try and knit your job in with the job here. So I had it all in place, every age group, right? And some of the names, one of them's he's been manager non-league for years now, Tom Loiser. I wanted him in charge of working in liaison with, he was another fullback, with Neil Banfield. There was a scream up because he was my brother-in-law. Right, but the point being, good, knowledgeable, well-qualified people with a sense of humour, a work ethic, and a feel-good factor about them, right? It frightened the life out of him. He the money, and then what he does, he sells £1 million centre half for 75 grand. You know, so what's gone on defies logic. We obviously had diverting agendas.
I mean, I suppose, though, if there was a covenant in that situation, he wouldn't have been able to have ignored that.
No, if it was put in place at the time. But this is when I was talking.
No, I was just thinking
how
to, it's all about trying to think of solutions and new ideas. Maybe someone somewhere will listen to this and think, I mean, that ain't a bad idea. Maybe lobby
Yeah.
someone and talk about it.
The only
Because you've got so
downside,
much experience, John. You know,
yeah. Well, no, I agree. And
you learn from the
people,
past. That's what you should
yeah,
do.
yeah, I should do, yeah. I mean, I still throw in an F bomb, but it's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's an exclamation mark,
Yeah.
really, or it's something to accentuate the point or exaggerate the point. There's no evil intentions behind it.
Nah.
But anyway, that's by the by. At the end of the day, it's got to be the right people or the right person. Because the only thing I will say, where fans are concerned, the problem with football is, well, it ain't a problem really, but it is a problem. At the same time, it is a problem. Everybody's got an opinion on it. Everybody's an expert at 4:45 when the final whistle goes. Hindsight becomes 20/20 vision. So you can't have numpties in position of power. And I would always say that it's got to be, because even in the lower divisions, you've got managers. I'm not going to mention any names, but like on golf days, they're going around bragging the fact that they've managed someone for 9 games and got a massive payout that is basically the equivalent of 3 years decent standard of living. You know, so that it's not as if they're here. I wanted to be at Orient on a long-term basis and run it along the lines of the way Dario Gradi at Crewe was. And I said, listen, you might flirt with the occasional relegation. You'll have the occasional promotion, more than the one they've had. Not counting the non-league one, more than the one they've had in the last 26 years, that's for sure. Otherwise, I'd have fallen on my sword. And you'll have some blinding cup runs. In the meantime, it's about keeping the conveyor belt turning and giving kids a chance.
Yeah, I mean, an analogy of that, I guess, would be something like, a hedge fund versus Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is long-term investor, compound interest. All of a sudden, after 30 years of investments, the compound interest starts rolling. He's the richest man in the world. But it takes so long to build that base knowledge and understanding and technicals. Yeah. And if you look at the long term, eventually it will come. Not only will it come to fruition, but it will come to fruition 10 times, 100 times more powerfully if you try and get the short term buck.
It's funny this conversation yesterday with the ex Chief Scout Youth Development Officer Bernie Dixon. I rang him to see how he is. We've stayed in touch, and it's funny, like, and we're not. I'm not talking that I'm drinking water. I ain't had a glass of wine or nothing. We're not talking at it through Chianti tinted glasses. You know what I mean? He said, just saying, Joe. He said he said to one of the other coaches, the geezer I wanted as my number 2, right, who actually ended up taking me place, right. So how would Barry know his game was darts and snooker? So there's been some skullduggery which I sussed out. Behind the scenes, how would he know to appoint Patsy Holland, who I wanted as my number 2, right? So he said, so Bernie says yesterday, very quickly, it's a quick story, right? He said, I always said to Patsy, if I won the Euro lottery, he said, I'd look to put all the old gang back together again. He said, and I'd buy a little club like Leighton Orient. And I said, whoa, Bernie, let me stop you there. And he what? I said, because I'm part of the old gang you'd put together. Am I right in assuming that? He said, definitely, 100%. Bless him. He said, one of the best coaches I've ever seen. Right, bless his heart for saying it, right? Which I suppose when I was coming up, I was on blob and I was, right? But I said to him, then it's my duty as a friend to protect you, because why would you buy a club with no assets? So I said, you've got to be cute about it. I said, and if we do have a Euro lottery win, I said, I've always said the same. My missus said, I'll kill you. She said, I'll kill you in your sleep. She says, if you buy a football club. I said, but that's what I'd want to do, because we love the game. You understand what I mean? Yeah. But at the same time, don't be an idiot with your money. You know what I mean? So you need to buy a club that's got like a tangible asset. The club don't own the ground. They don't own the apartments on the corners of the ground. They've got no tangible youth policy, and they've got no saleable assets in the first team. So what are you buying? They've got no. I mean, they've got a thing there. I forgot his title, but he come on my Twitter feed the other day. But in terms of commercial department, they've got no commercial department. It's as you were when I was there under Frank Wolf. He was there for 15 years. You know. He'd do a lap of honour and crack open a bottle of champagne if he got a match ball sponsor.
They'd be better off moving to Essex.
I suspect that's the plan, and I suspect that there's only one person going to benefit from that. Because, basically, they'll just fill it from the outside in. And you've got the apartments on the 4 corners of the ground, and what'll happen is the stands would end up, even if they get knocked down, it don't matter, because that's the other thing that I forgot to mention. Oh yeah, but what about the ground? What about what he's done to the ground? Well, that was developed allegedly with lottery money, right? So the bottom line is, my predictions came true. And rather than, and like he said, going back to the original point from 25, 30 minutes ago, whatever the time is on the thing we've been talking, Adrian Charles said, I must confess, along with a lot of other supporters, to being particularly naive, because the first question we asked was, when the Chinese guy took over West Bromwich Albion, has he got any money? Rather than asking, is he going to do what's right by the football club? So that brings me nicely back to
the point
that we were talking about in the first place.
Did you see? I don't know if you've seen this, but the guy that set Spotify up, who's a Swedish guy, who's worth 4 billion, has put his hat in the ring to buy Arsenal. Although Stan Kroenke doesn't want to sell up, but he's put a consortium together of him. He's obviously going to put the money up, but he's a big Arsenal fan apparently. Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, and Patrick Vieira, as sort of a management buyout backed by this Daniel Elk. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a better way to go, whereby, I guess, football, the club legends, are involved?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had 75% support on the fans' message board when all the shit hit the fan under Bichetti to come back and sort the gaff out from top to bottom, right? And here's the point. If I'd have had the opportunity to come back, I only would have employed former Leyton Orient people, because I knew the feeling that once upon a time we all had when we were there. I knew the feel. I've always said, Joe, you don't play football, you feel it, right? And it's hard to describe, but when you're in an environment, even when things were going like totally tits up, we were losing 10 grand a week, I was firefighting all over the gaff, I was juggling 6 jobs, people weren't being paid money, coach companies, players weren't being paid part of their signing on fees, they could have withdrawn their labour, etc., etc., etc. Still going over the centre of excellence every Monday and Thursday, still coaching the youth team, still coaching the reserves. It was born of like the feeling I had for the place. So if I'd have gone back, I'd have gone, right, let me run it from top to bottom, right? Obviously, I want a long-term contract. Obviously, I want decent money, right? But it's about organising this place. And it's about redeveloping the place, reorganising the place and reinvigorating. And part of that would have been employing only former Leyton Orient people. Now, I think that's the common denominator. You've got 3 Arsenal legends, absolute Arsenal legends, who were there for years and years and years, and they've got a fundamental core feeling for the football club. And it's not all about, they're high profile, massively high profile. They're well known. They're recognised on the world stage. They've had a bit of experience now. Didn't go so well for Vieira at a couple of clubs, didn't go very well for Henry at a couple of clubs. But, you know, like you said, hopefully you learn through your experiences and from your mistakes. But the bottom line is they've got that massive core feeling for the football club. Someone who's a little, I think he's cute, is Bergkamp.
Yeah.
You can see he's a sharp cookie. He's a thing, and he keeps his cards close to his chest.
And he's been Ajax, hasn't he, as well?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that with regards to their development and part of the Ajax thing, which it's all part of what I learned from in the early 70s, because that was the blueprint that they picked up on, part of the plagiarism at Chelsea Football Club when I was there. And when I first went there, Dave Sexton was the manager, and him and Dario Gradi said, this is the route to go. This is the way to go. So I'm going back to 1974.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, you know, we talk about the money in football and how, you know, owners, sort of capitalist, greedy fat cat owners, you know, sort of siphoning off profits into their own bin and stuff, which I guess they can do as owners, but maybe there needs to be stuff that sort of prevents that for the benefit of the football club. But obviously players the wages have grown astronomically over the past 20 years. And it's interesting now where you've got ex-pros like Henry, Vieira and Bergkamp that are multi-millionaires through football because they earn good money. They're in coaching now. And so you've got they're able to probably put a little bit of skin in the game. All right, mate, you that owns Spotify will do the most. But all of a sudden, it's like player power post professional career, because with money comes power, doesn't it? You're seeing it with the Man United boys at Salford.
Yeah. No, I mean, it would be a bit different for me than it would for them, because if you read my book cover to cover, I earned fuck all out of the game because I slid down the slippery pole into the lower divisions from what was then the Premier League, the top division at Chelsea. I suppose really part of the thing would be, I'll give them a little loyalty test. I mean, how determined are you to do it, and how well do you want to do the job on X amount of pounds? If they're already multi-millionaires, then I'd say to them, you don't really need multi-million pound salaries. Let's see And one thing I did learn from him, and it basically tied in with what I said anyway, and I couldn't understand because he contradicted himself. Along with him, I wanted everything incentivized, and yet he didn't want to incentivize coaches to help produce players by giving them part of, if they were sold for multi-millions or sold for $1 million, like Darren Purse, who ended up like £1 million centre half on 4 occasions, but they sold him for 75 grand to Oxford. Well, I don't understand how that's good business.
No.
They said, well, he's got a 30% sell on. I said, well, I've developed a player for 4 years from the age of 13, right? He's been at this football club. He's been at this environment. This is where he learned how to grow up. This is where he was taught his habits. This is where he was coached to defend well. And then they sold him for £1 million Oxford to somewhere like Birmingham. So your 30% gets you 300 grand. And then you add that to the original 75. So I went back and I said to the powers that be, why would you accept 375 grand for £1 million player? How's that good business? Anyway, they weren't having it. So maybe me piping up, it didn't, in the aftermath of it, I'd already left the club, but I just thought it was complete cobblers. But one thing we did agree on, things should be incentivized. With regards to my own salary, but then he contradicted it by not wanting to incentivize coaches, which I don't get.
No,
you're talking about the free. You're talking about the free, like the Holy Trinity at Arsenal, like the Bergkamp, Henry, and Vieira. I'd say, yeah, okay, fair enough. They're multi-millionaires out of football, so they don't really need money. They've had other experiences, maybe a financial recompense for a couple of sackings. So that's a nice cushion for him. I'd say this is like a double basic salary, but the rest is going to be incentivized. Let's see how bad you want it. We're going back to Kroenke, however you say it. I think just make him an offer he can't refuse, because they always say that. I don't want to sell it. When you make your first offer, they always say, I don't want to sell it. If you make him an offer he can't refuse, because I think it happened with the previous geezer, David Dean. I think he got 100 million for his shares.
What's the phrase? Stuff so many pound notes down your gullet, you shit gold nuggets.
I've never heard it.
I probably just made it up. I've been watching Succession, actually. I've been watching Succession, but there's something similar to that, where it's basically they don't want to sell, but you pay them so much money they can't not sell.
Yeah, I'd love to have that problem. Yeah. Shitting gold nuggets.
Speaking of shit, Tottenham, very, very lackluster performance against Man City the weekend. Thoughts on, I don't know if you managed to watch the game or listen to the game, but very strange goings on at Spurs. I know we kind of touched on it the other day. Obviously, they sacked Mourinho before the final. He's actually got one good thing about Mourinho is he's good in one-off games, and might have done something in that final. Man City, possibly were there for the taking, given looking at the performance. They scraped to 1-0. What's the thinking behind getting a 29-year-old in for eight games when they're pushing for fourth and they've got a cup final?
First things first, that's twice you've done it now, right? The way you've linked things, right? So I can see you having to give up your job and working at the BBC. There's people working at TalkSport, BBC, Sky, BT, nowhere near as good as you.
Well, thank you.
And, yeah, you're going to be on $250,000 a year before you know it. So you'll have to take a pay cut. But anyway,
exactly.
Listen, if you believe the audio, Joe, on the thing that I was sent, if you believe the audio, if you believe it's him, if you believe that he knows it, there's Jamie Redknapp actually talking about the reasons why they sacked Jose, which is if they said it was written into his contract, apparently, allegedly, who knows, only him and Spurs know, if they sacked him when he was in top 4, he would get X amount. If they sacked him when he was in the top 6, he would get X amount again. If they sacked him outside of the top 6, which I'm led to believe there was wherever there was, it dropped drastically. So it was all about the timing. And then Stuart Pearce said on the commentary on TalkSport, because I don't subscribe, so I wasn't watching it live, so I made do with the commentary on TalkSport. Stuart Pearce spoke absolute cobblers, nonsense. Well, it's just nonsense. It said, listen, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. I'll tell you how it works, and this is what happened, and this is more or less how it would have been worded, right? Daniel Levy's walked in, he's called a meeting, he's walked into the office, sat down, and then having called the meeting to speak to Mason would have come in and he said, look, we've let Jose Mourinho go. You're running it till the end of the season. Right, because basically he's a coach employed by Tottenham, right? And he's one of the underlings, he's one of the under coaches. We scratched the surface on the reasons why perhaps Ledley King wasn't given it, in terms of what I said about his makeup, his persona. He's, in my opinion, perceived he's a little bit introvert and insular when I knew him. So obviously he's come on leaps and bounds and played under great managers at a great club with great players. But, you know, normally it only affects your personality to a certain extent. I just didn't think Ledley would have been extrovert and charismatic enough to take it over, which is what I said in the last episode. So this is what Stuart Pearce said is, well, maybe Spurs have recognised the fact that they've got a good young coach in their midst and they felt like he might be worth a chance. I guarantee, don't matter how good a coach Spurs think he is, and I guarantee even if they had recognised the fact that they've got a good coach in their midst, and some of the ones they've employed, I would beg to differ. There's no way, shape or form he'll still be manager this time next year. Even after the summer, even after the close season. So it would have been a case of Levy walks in, Ryan, can I have a quick word with you? Yeah, listen, this is what's gone on. I want you to run things until the end of the season. Are you okay with that? Well, he ain't going to say no, is he? You know what I mean? As long as I can go back to me under 23 in the academy. Yeah, that's the only thing that's the thing I should have said. I should have said, well, I'll do it for you. To the vice chairman Weinrabe, who ended up putting a big bread knife through my shoulder blades. Right, and then the other, Tony Wood was in the land of the bewildered. Phil Wallace might have given me a chance. Barry Earn didn't know anything about football. He just had his own agenda the way, and everything I predicted has transpired. But what I should have said was, yeah, I'll do it for you, but as long as I can go back to my youth team and on an extended contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's no good going in firefighting, do this, that, and the next, save the club from liquidation, or actually administration before that relegation. Then administration, and then having delayed the inevitable, you've saved them from ultimately liquidation, and you end up getting relegated with 15 players. So all I did was basically delay the inevitable. Now, where someone like Ryan Mason's concerned, coaching is coaching, right? Football is football. It's still the same game. But I just think it's about sort of stands alone as like a lighthouse, a manager. You know what I mean? It's like a focus. It's like a go-to guy. It's like someone to look up to, someone to listen to. And I just don't think he's obviously too young, and he hasn't put enough hours in any way, shape or form at the moment for him to have it on a full-time basis.
Oh no!
I've got to say, it was so strange. It was, but like I say, if you believe the audio that's come through, someone sent it to me on WhatsApp, a Spurs supporter, and I also heard it on Twitter. By direct message, Jamie Redknapp's giving the reasons why they sacked him with regards to I think I'm right in saying it would have been the compensation, and if the regulations are anything to go by, Premier League only, from what I'm led to believe. Obviously, I've been out of the loop for a long time in terms of contractual stuff, but it's got to be settled within 28 days. So, he'll have a nice lump sum, but it's not as much as it would have been if it had been top 3, top 4, top 6.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know about you, but is it not? This is the business end of the season, and your season could be made or broken within 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems such a weird time to do it. Either do it at the beginning or halfway through the season. At least you got another half of the season to try and make things right. But it's like Harry Carry, or as the Japanese call it, well, Harry Carry or seppuku. It's ritual.
Yeah, well, I know all about that.
Yeah, ritual suicide. What?
Yeah.
He's got hard into nothing now. He's lost the final. It could have had a really good push. Could have won the last 8 games if Levy, the master tactician, had have seen the wood for the trees and allocated a replacement. But he hasn't. He's plucked a 29-year-old, the greenest manager, the youngest ever manager to manage in the Premier League, to manage a supposedly Big Six club for the last 8 games.
You're right. Normally, that's what's that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happened to me. They get your replacement in situ, in place, and then push the button on you, and then you're gone. He's I can remember it like it was yesterday, and this, I just think, for a club Tottenham size, if Jamie Redknapp's theory is correct, then it's penny pinching in the extreme. Timing the sacking so that they didn't have to give him as much compensation. It's like absolute penny pinching in the extreme, and then the chance of actually winning a trophy, albeit like the 3rd best trophy in domestically, it's still silverware. And at the end of the day, they had no qualms about having photos on the back page holding up 4 fingers. I've won 4 on the belt now. From my deduction, everybody's deducement, they're probably the best coach in Europe at this moment in time, if not the world. So he's proud. He's proud to put the silverware on the sideboard. I just didn't get it, and for sure he would have been leaning heavily on the experience of Lloris. As an international goalkeeper, forward/captain, probably Dyer, which his name explains his form and his ability to play centre back, in my opinion. If people can be bothered to trawl back through episodes, everything with regards to how he gets caught out, I predicted it. Some would even say, Christ, Jesus, Sitz, you maybe even know what you're talking about and what you're looking at. In midfield, no invention, same problem. Absolutely no invention. I'm looking in there who are the leaders. And then obviously up front, vast experience and the main man, Harry Kane. I think the manager would have leaned heavily on those people to keep things ticking over and keep things going and try and achieve a result. But then he on the Monday, he limped out the game, didn't he, Harry, against Everton?
Yeah.
So, he's got his own stuff to worry about with regards to, having Weetabix ankles. You know what I mean? Listen, I spoke to his dad. I even advised his dad on what strap-ins he should be having, because it's happened too many times now. And when you look at the thing, it probably, I felt a little bit disappointed and let down. People saying, what do you think? I said City all day long, and I think by an emphatic victory, minimum of 2 clear goals. But I'll tell you what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a tenner on 2-0, a tenner on 3-0, a tenner on 3-1, and a tenner on 4-1. So, there might have been a chance where the Spurs got a breakaway goal or a goal from a set piece, but they just couldn't put the ball in the net. City absolutely hammered them. And they got the odd goal. So credit to Spurs in terms of trying to do
defensively
it
quite good,
for Mason. But when you look at it as a centre back, I don't know if this makes sense. But as the ball rises, as there's certain things like that wide free kick, but it's a short distance from the goal. When you're marking, right, and it's a knack, and I had the knack, and this is part of my argument with things like Bruce at Gillingham, because I was always, if he was such a great player and so much better than everybody else, why is all these jobs allocated to me? By the mental midget, Peacock, right? When the ball's close, what you've got to do when the ball's on the rise is where you've got to spring when the ball's on the rise. I don't know if that makes sense. As the ball goes up, you've got to go up. And what happened was he lost the race. I said, I put it on Twitter. He lost the race of, not the race in. I deleted in and I went to of. He lost the race of anticipation. against the centre back who put it in the back of the net. The Spurs guy marking him.
Yes,
so what you've got to do, you've got to, when you're in an area and you're marking, you've got to anticipate, and then like the rest is basically the keys are very simple. But part of the situation there is you've got to make first contact on the ball. So he lost the race of anticipation. He got caught under the ball. You've got to be like at least say an arm's length in front, and you've got to make sure you've got to spring as the ball rises. It's a knack, and it's something that can't be shown without being on a training field.
Question: did you usually look to win the ball, win the header, or stop the person winning the header?
100% emphatically win the header.
Win the header.
Yeah. And I was unbelievable at it. Even though it was in the lower divisions for the majority of my career, I was top drawer at it. Top drawer. And you just think, what if only someone had taken a chance and resurrected me.
Was you good at attacking headers as well?
Yeah. I've got my fair share of goals from set pieces, and before assists were even fashionable. I must have had like probably 10 to 15 assists in the season we went up.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, because the run I made, which a lot of it now has been repeated, and I've said it on previous episodes, a lot of the set pieces are like circa sort of 85 to 89. Even the one that England used in the last World Cup, when the kid Holland, he got that from working with Dario Gradi. The one where it's a roll, a clip, a head back, and a tap in. You know what I mean? It's all about distract, and then boom, hold up, it's in the back of the net. You understand?
Yeah.
It's to take people, defenders, is to take their focus away from there to there, and all of a sudden, before you know it, someone's side footing it in on the back post, or what was it, a stooping header, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little corner one, wasn't it, from Kane?
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, that's an hour, so I think that was a nice little, neat little summary there. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. We should cut it short there, if you don't mind. And please do keep listening out. Retweet, share, subscribe, comment, DM me, DM you, John, if you can, over and above comments, because I've struggled to trawl through them. If you do, at least comment at least at me, and then I'll know if you've got any questions to ask the next time. And I'm away actually next week, so we may have a little hiatus, but you're doing some other bits and pieces, aren't you, John? So viewers and fans can see you elsewhere.
Yeah, elsewhere, yeah. I mean, what we want on this one, Joe, very quickly, just so everybody knows, we want them to view, we want them to hopefully like, we want them to share, we want them to subscribe. And then what we're going to be doing in the near future, hopefully, is if we can get some sort of sponsorship for it, or at least climb the ladder on the social media aspect of it, like with regards to YouTube. But yeah, myself, I'm quite humbled, really. I got invited by the LCDC, which is the London Cab Drivers Club, to do an interview and talk to them about my opinions on the cab trade and my football career, etc. And then later on today, I'm doing a podcast with. People saying they've been waiting for it for ages, so I'm assuming it's going to be a lengthy one. Under the Cosh, they're called. So hopefully we can all reciprocate and people enjoy what they're listening to, and it gives them a little bit more of an insight than your normal run of the mill. At the end of the day, and blah blah blah, and
the platitudes, the bullshit,
moribund grey platitudes, which
But
unfortunately, I've never done them. Unfortunately, I wish I'd mastered the art.
Well, that's not what we want here, John. It's the Football Uncensored.
Yeah.
We want shit, bollock, and bastard, and plus insight. That's the football combination, and that's what happens. Behind closed doors. And that's what I've never experienced, being a non-professional person in the game, and that's what I think hopefully people want to hear. It's how it really works, what really goes on, and real shit, not fake shit.
Yeah, not fake.
Yeah,
that's right. And obviously I can tap into stuff that most of what goes on I've been through.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, at varying levels. Yeah. So
Okay.
hopefully this will tide people over until we meet again.
Yeah. Adieu. Adieu. Adieu.
Cheers,
For you
mate.
the
So,
same.
yeah.
God.
Happy days. Happy days.
See you later.
Thanks for finding the time, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah.